I sat upon the carved iron throne of An-Kereg, looking down across the great hall. I was gripping the cold iron handles hard, and I looked down on all the sons of the noble houses and Highland clans, those boys who used to call me names in the courtyard. "You don't belong here," one had said to me once. "Down here we kill savages like you," said another. They were now lords in their own right, and they were on their knees, heads downcast towards the cold stone floor. They all were, these sons and daughters of lords and ladies, all bending the knee to me. This is where I belong, I thought. Let them make their japes and curses now, for I am the Lord of An-Kereg. I felt an ugly grin pulling at the corners of my mouth. Yet there was a strange feeling about the place that I could not shake. How had I come to sit upon the throne? Where was Lord Emond? He still lived, and I was no son of his, only his ward, just some fisherman's son from a land far from here. I was not worthy enough to claim such an illustrious title as Lord of An-Kereg. A pit formed in my stomach. What fool was I to even dare to claim this throne? I attempted to rise, intending to make my most sincere apologies to Lord Emond in the hopes he may spare me from my insolence. Yet I did not rise. I was bound to the throne. I looked down frantically, yet nothing physically prevented me from escaping. I did see that my hands were still clenched tightly around the throne's handles. My knuckles were white as snow. It was my body, I realized, that was betraying me. It did not wish to leave the throne. I brought my eyes up and searched the room for something, anything that would explain my current circumstance, and I saw with some horror that things did not appear as I remembered them being. The great hall was dark and cold, unbearably cold. All color was drained from the world. There was the smell of smoke, yet no fires lit the halls, and I noticed in bewilderment that snow was drifting in from above. I looked up and saw that the roof of the ancient castle was gone. Darkness consumed the ceiling, and the great wooden support columns ran into an abyss. What madness has possession of me, I thought. Am I cursed? Bewitched? It seemed as though I stared into that abyss for a lifetime. Yet just as I became aware of time, my fixation was broken by the sounds of footsteps. I gazed down the hall to see the shape of Lord Emond Greymon striding towards his ancestral seat, with a face as hard as iron. In his hands was the ancestral sword of House Greymond, grey iron. The sword was as long as I was tall, and its edge was sharp. The blade was as dark as iron, yet it was made just as much by steel as it was by sorcery. Ancient runes ran down the length of the dark blade and radiated old magic. It was unsheathed, slung over Lord Emond's shoulder. I reflexively pushed myself into the throne, my eyes fixated on the sword. "Never bear steel," Lord Emond said to me once, "if you do not mean to use it." I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to say that I never would have acted so bold, that I would never be so presumptuous to assume that I would ever be worthy enough to sit the throne. But my words would not come to me. My breath was caught in my throat. I tried again to stand and flee, but my body would not move. I could feel tears beginning to prick at the back of my eyes. Lord Emond stopped just shy of the stone steps leading up to the throne. He cast his gaze up to me, his lips parted, and a ghastly voice came forward. "This is how you repay me, boy?" he said somberly. "Was it not me who raised you alongside mine own son, As my own blood? Alongside him, but not as one. I am not your blood, I said, my voice shaking with anger that I knew was not there. I thought I should be angry. A part of me wanted to be, yet all I felt in that moment was the cold, the biting cold. A look of profound sorrow passed over Lord Emmond's face. You are, lad, in every way that mattered. His eyes returned to the ground, and in that instant Lord Emmond fell. Grey iron hit the floor with a clang. I could only sit there in silence, staring at the unmoving body of Lord Emmond Greymond. Icy tears ran down my face unbidden then. It felt as though they were carving bloody valleys in my flesh. I wanted nothing more than to run down the steps, to pick up Lord Emmond and leave this damned hall. But I didn't. I couldn't, for I sat upon the throne. I sat there for an agonizing amount of time, unmoving, the noble sons still kneeling to me. I stared at the cold body of Lord Emmond, tears still streaming down my face. It felt as though there was a void in my chest now, a dark hole from which no light could escape. The cold stabbed into me now, piercing deep into my flesh. I stared for so long that I almost did not hear a second set of footsteps approaching. I brought my head up, now heavy with sorrow, away from the lifeless body of Lord Emmond, to see another figure approaching the throne. He was clad in armor, with the iron-grey tree of House Greymond emblazoned on the chest plate. The figure strode through the hall, his face a portrait of sorrow and covered in blood. That seat was once going to be mine, he said in a familiar voice. The pain it brings me to see a treacherous bastard atop it. My eyes shot wide. The empty void turned into a dagger pressing directly against my heart. You're supposed to be dead, I said. The words were coded in mourning. Aye, and you were supposed to die with me, Roderick Greymond said, stopping just before Lord Emmond's body. Tell me, does my father's throne feel comfortable? No, I said. That wasn't completely a lie. The wood was hard and the iron was cold. But the power invested in that throne, that did feel good. I never wanted it. That was a lie. No, said the ghostly voice. You seem rather comfortable. Perhaps you wanted me dead. Perhaps you wanted to replace me so that my Lord Father would choose you as his heir. No, I wouldn't. Roderick smirked. A cold look filled his iron-grey eyes. I saw the wound that slew him still red and wet with blood. It gaped as he spoke, like a second mouth. Remember this. His words were garbled as blood began to seep from his throat. There is no one more accursed to the gods than a kinslayer. You needn't have struck the killing blow, for the gods know your base desires. And with that, Roderick Greymond died once more, his body falling next to his Lord Father's. This time the tears came in a torrent. I fell to my knees, finally free of the damned throne. I was sobbing loudly, and I heard it echoing through the darkened hall. All the while the noble sons and daughters kneeled to me. My eyes met the cold stone floor, and I saw that my hands were caked in blood. It was so warm. I awoke screaming. Dawn broke cold and cloudy, promising a day of summer snows. I sat at the end of a bench in the great hall, breaking my fast on a light serving of mutton. I had little appetite after the restless night's sleep. The dream was ever present in my mind, the image of Lord Emmond and Roderick's bodies lying cold on the stone floor just under the throne. A bad dream, I thought, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Nothing more. The great hall of Ahn'Qireg was filled with the noise of servants and courtiers, many and more of them coming to break their fast and mingle. The smell of roasted meats hung heavily in the air. Pale grey light drafted through the high windows, illuminating the banner hanging above the throne. The iron-grey tree of House Greyman stood vigilant atop its halved field of green and black. The tree, depicted in the style of House Greyman's Nordic ancestors, had roots thick and tangled, a sign of the house's words, "Our roots are deep." For House Greyman was of the blood of the ancient Nords who came to these lands as raiders and stayed for its endless bounties of iron and fertile lands. I too was of the blood of the Nords, though mine was stronger than the peoples of Tir Ira. Many hundreds of generations separated their fathers from mine. I stared at the banner, my eyes transfixed by the sigil. There was a tightness in my chest that made it difficult to breathe, and for a moment it seemed as though the world was slipping back into the darkness of the dream. Something slapped against my back, and the spell was broken. "Does that dusty old banner intrigue you so much that you would forget to eat?" a familiar voice said. I turned my head to see, to my relief, the smiling face of Edric Colwyn, heir of House Colwyn, and like me, ward to Lord Emmond. I felt the tension in my chest lighten at the sight of him. I considered him a close friend, sometimes even a brother, and the sight of him was enough to somewhat clear my mind. "Forgive me," I said, trying to match Edric's energy. "I was distracted." I saw Edric's smile fade as he sat next to me. He gazed at my face and said, "Are you well, Asher? You are pale. It was only a jest, but perhaps you do need more than a little mutton." I felt my cheeks redden and I turned away from Edric. "I'm fine," I said, perhaps too sharply. "I just had a restless night." I did not wish to lie to him, but I would not speak of the treacherous dreams that assailed me in the night. Edric sat there looking at me for what felt like an age. I saw him scrutinizing my face, and for a moment thought that he had seen through my deception. He surely must have noticed the redness on my already pale face. Though if he did, he said nothing. After a time, he sighed and turned to his food. "If you say so," he said, though I thought I could hear doubt in his voice. "You really must not stay up so late. Do not think I haven't seen you in the yard late at night training. You're already stronger than the lot of us, and better with a sword. I don't know what more you feel you need to prove." Loyalty, I thought shamefully. I need to prove my loyalty. The morning's feast began to die down as many finished eating and conversing. Me and Edric sat together in silence for a time, though Edric's jovial nature would not keep him quiet long. And he did bring me out of my mind. For a moment I even forgot about my dream. Edric just had an air about him that made me forget all of my worries when we spoke, and I loved him for that. Edric had just finished a story of a troll hunt his father had gone on when a loud thud echoed through the great hall. The hinges of the massive oak doors shrieked as they were pushed open. A murmur went through the gathering of courtiers and servants, followed quickly by a wave of silence. Lord Emmond's brother loped into the hall like a stalking wolf, every step slow and intentional. His dark grey eyes scanned the room, and I did not fail to notice the dark expression in them. Mercer Greymond, better known as Black Mercer for his temperament, was always in a foul mood. He was a stern and at times cruel man who seemingly took no joy in anything. During the Farandelian rebellion, when then Prince Phaedrid rose against his mad father, Black Mercer was made Lord Regent of Tir Ira by Lord Aemond, and charged with defending the realm should anyone be foolish enough to assail our lands. It was something of an open secret that Black Mercer saw this as a veiled slight from his lord brother, either to keep him from winning any personal glory in the war that followed, or to give him a taste of something that he would never have. Both rumors were far from how Lord Aemond saw the matter, I know, but I half suspected that Lord Mercer believed them. It was also rumored that one of the only times he smiled was when he received word of Roderick's death, which made him the heir of Tir Ira. When Black Mercer's eyes fixated on me, a cold chill ran down my spine. The Lord's brother stared at me with a look of what seemed to me as incredulity. It felt like his gaze cut through the layers of my flesh and stripped me down to my soul. I could hear my heart begin to race, and I thought he might have somehow peered into my sleeping mind to view the dream. After what seemed to be an eternity, Black Mercer Grayman broke into a stride towards me. My muscles tensened. They were screaming at me to flee, to run from this encroaching predator. Yet I could not. He was no lord, but Black Mercer was a lord's brother, and that held power. He stopped just short of the bench Edric and I sat. Both of us got to our feet immediately and bowed our heads. "My lord," we said in unison. He regarded us a moment before fully focusing again on me. "You," he said curtly. It sounded to me as though he said the word as a curse. "My lord brother bids me summon you. He awaits in the hearthwood." Just as he finished speaking, he quickly turned away from me and made to leave the room. A rush of heat ran to my head. It was unusual for Lord Aemond to summon me alone, and to a place as sacred as the hearthwood, no less. My mind was adrift in a sea of fear and confusion, and in my dazed state I called out to Mercer. "What does Lord Aemond need of me?" Black Mercer stopped and slowly turned back to me. He regarded me coldly. Through gritted teeth he said, "Do as your lord bids, boy," and continued his march out of the great hall. Edric and I shared a look, one of confusion for Edric, and one of fear for me. The cold bit into my flesh as I entered the hearthwood. It was 2.5 acres in the middle of An Cerrig, just under the south face of the mountain the stronghold was carved into. It was a place of calm yet primal beauty. Old oaks and towering sentinel trees made it seem like an entirely different place than the castle I had just exited. In the southern kingdoms, people prayed and wed in grand stone cathedrals. The people of the north favored the calmness of a hearthwood. In the center stood the hearth tree, an ancient tree that ran up the face of the mountain. I looked up to see the branches. They were twisted with age, giving the tree an air of wisdom. Red leaves blew in the wind. Covered with freshly fallen snow, they hang low, almost touching the roof of the stronghold of House Greymond. When I was a boy, I feared the massive branches would snap from the tree and crush me beneath the crumbled walls of An Cerrig. Lord Aemond had assured me that the branches had never come loose in the almost 1,000-year lifespan of the tree, and they wouldn't for centuries more. At its base, the likenesses of the gods were carved into the bark. 9 there were, each with a sorrowful look in their eyes. Those eyes had seen countless generations kneel before them, offerings in hand. They had watched Lord Aemond's ancestors build the great stronghold of An Cerrig around them. They watched me now, as if judging whether I was worthy to be in their presence. The gods of the Old North were much different than the southern gods of the other kingdoms. When the first landers crossed the North Sea, they had brought with them their old gods of nature and war. For some time they stood opposed to the gods of the old Highland clans, but as time moved on and the Old Nords began to integrate with the Highland clans, the two pantheons of gods merged into one. It was said that when King Rurik the Unifier married Feyria Ulister to unite the two peoples as one, they had sages and druids carve the likenesses of their new gods into the great tree growing in the middle of the hearthwood I stood in now. I found Lord Emmond sitting on a large rock next to the hearth tree's base, cleaning grey iron. I froze at the sight of it, a knot forming in my stomach. Nonetheless, I pressed forward. The summer snows bothered Lord Emmond little and crunched under my feet, alerting him to my presence. "You summoned me, my lord?" I asked tentatively. "I did." Lord Emmond's voice was smooth, and had always been a calming presence to me. Today, though, it filled me with an immense worry. Lord Emmond raised his eyes from grey iron and stared at me. After a moment he said, "Fetch me the sheath." I did as I was commanded. When Lord Emmond had sheathed the ancient sword, I felt a great weight lifted from my body. I hadn't realized that I had been holding my breath. "Come, walk with me, lad," he said softly. "I mean to take you to the crypts." I was taken aback. "The crypts, my lord?" I asked hesitantly. "Aye, the crypts," Lord Emmond said, moving towards the hearth tree. Located under the hearth tree itself, the crypts were one of the first structures built after the main keep. It held generations of Greymen dead, from the first king of the mountains and the clans to Lord Emmond's father. Never in my life did I think to set foot in such a hallowed place. House Greymen held their dead in such honor that none were allowed in the crypts without the express permission of the Lord. Even with Lord Emmond's approval, I still felt uneasy. I felt my nerves gnawing at me, and it seemed as though the gods of the hearth tree were watching my every step. When we arrived at the heavy stone doors of the crypt, Lord Emmond pulled them open, revealing a dark passageway deep beneath the ground and into the mountain. Lord Emmond gestured me to enter. For a moment I dared not, but finally relented upon the Lord's command. The air inside the crypt was cold and stagnant. Old statues looked down on us as we descended deeper into the earth. For most of the descent there was a deafening silence, until Lord Emmond said, "Do you remember the day I found you, lad?" "Of course, my lord," I said at once. It had been during the old Phoenix King's campaign in the northern kingdoms when Lord Emmond's host had happened upon a burnt-out fishing village. The king's forces had laid waste to the garrison and left it to burn. Only some of the men came back looking for survivors. My parents had hidden me and themselves outside of town, but returned to salvage any of our belongings that may have gone unburnt. The soldiers killed my father first, then my mother, and they would have killed me if not for Lord Emmond's intervention. He demanded to know why soldiers of the king's army would turn to such savage butchery. When they gave him no good reply, Lord Emmond ordered they be hanged for murder. He then took me under his protection, and later made me his ward. I was no more than a boy of 5 years old. Now I was 10 and 7 years old, and from that day I had served Lord Emmond. It took a long while, but we managed to reach the end of the crypt. We stopped in front of a statue of a man with a long flowing beard holding a greatsword. "Do you know who this is, lad?" Lord Emmond asked. "Your father, Lord Halbrand Greyman." "Correct. And the ones we passed on our descent? Who were they?" "Your ancestors, starting with Rurik Greyman, the founder of your house and the first king of the mountains and clans." "Correct." Lord Emmond paused, seeming to only now acknowledge that there was one more statue. It was silent for a long moment. When he did speak, his voice was filled with sorrow. "And this one, lad? Who is this one?" I almost didn't answer. When I looked upon the stony face, my words caught in my throat. It was only after a moment of silence that I was able to force out, "Roderick." "Yes," Lord Emmond said. There was an obvious pain in his voice. Silence once again filled the cold crypt. I sat there remembering the time I had spent with Roderick. The day I arrived at Ankereg, Roderick was the first to greet me. Roderick was 3 years older than I, and was with me through much of my learning of the culture and practices of Tir Ira. He told me stories of the regional legends and heroes of times past. 3 years ago, when the banners were called to rebellion, Roderick was chosen by his lord father to lead half the armies of Tir Ira, and Roderick chose me to be his squire. We fought together for 2 years, and though our bond had been strong beforehand, it was in battle that the bonds of true brotherhood were forged. That bond was broken in one day when Roderick led us into battle one final time. It had been an ambush. The scouts did a poor job of reconnaissance, and when Roderick led us into a valley, all hell broke loose. Archers rained arrows from the hills, and knights in full plate armor rode into the valley to slaughter the Northmen. There was little we could do, yet for 2 hours we fought and held our position, forming a shield wall around Roderick. He shouted commands from the center, and for a time it seemed the knights would break themselves completely on our shields. Yet everything fell apart in an instant. I looked to Roderick, then to the battlefield, and when I looked back an arrow had sprung from his throat. I will never forget the sight of him falling to the ground, clutching at his throat, trying to gasp for air. I remember running to Roderick, holding his dying body in my arms as battle raged around us. Men were shouting, and I never noticed the knights withdrawing as Lord Emmond's army stormed into the battlefield. I remember Lord Emmond finding me still clutching the now dead body of his son. That night Roderick's body was burned, releasing his soul to the gods. His ashes returned to Ankereg with me and Lord Emmond, and were later entombed beneath the stone statue made in his honor. The silence of the crypt was deafening. I tried to think of something to say, but Lord Emmond spoke first. "Lad, what are the words of House Greymond?" "Our roots are deep, my lord," I said. "Our roots are deep. Truer words you will never find. Mine's the blood of the old Nords who settled here long ago, and the Highland clansmen who settled here long before them. These crypts hold over 100 generations of Greyman kings and lords. It is where my father is buried, and where his father was buried, and it is where my son is buried." Lord Emmond fixed his gaze on the statue of his son. "For almost 1,000 years we have ruled these lands. Even when King Lucan bent his knee to King Godwin, he rose again with all his lands and titles. Not once has House Greymond lost control of Tir Ira. It shall not end with me." Lord Emmond pulled a parchment from his belt and held it in front of me. "This is a royal decree from the king. There was a matter that I had been pondering for some time that needed his approval. This parchment is the fruit of that audience. It states that from this day till the end of your days, you, Asher, shall be hereby known as Asher Greymond, true-born son of Lord Emmond Greymond, and heir to the kingdom of Tir Ira and the lordship of Ankereg. You are a man grown now, and I have been watching you for some time. You have proven yourself to be an adept warrior, and most importantly, a man of honor. You have spent much of your life serving me, and have done so faithfully, asking little in return. I can think of no one more fitting to be my heir." Again, silence deafened the crypts. My head was spinning. Too late I realized I ought to kneel. I fell to a knee and was able to stutter out, my, my lord, you honor me, my lord, but I cannot accept this. I'm just a common-born fisherman's son. There are men better suited to ruling than I, surely there must be. Mayhaps there are, Lord Emmon said, but I have chosen you. What of your brother? He's of pure Greyman blood. My brother, Lord Emmon said hesitantly. My brother is dear to me, but I must be truthful, for both my sake and the realm's. He is not fit to rule. He is brash, hot-headed, and glory-hungry. You have attended near all of my council meetings since you've been here. You've seen each corner of the realm. You know the land just as well as any Greyman should. Now rise. You needn't bow to me. Not here. For a moment I did not rise. It was only after Lord Emmon placed a hand on my shoulder that I rose, trembling. Now, Lord Emmon said sharply, what are our words? For a moment in my state of shock, I feared I had forgotten them. Our roots are deep, I said shakily. Our roots are deep, Lord Emmon repeated. Remember them. They are a part of you now. One day you will sit in my seat after I am gone. Some may dare to question your claim to it. Remember the words, for they are yours now as much as they are mine and my father's and his father's. You are part of something greater than the two of us. Never forget that. When we exited the crypt, the snow had stopped falling and the sun had broke through the treetops. The gods watched from the hearth tree as we stepped into the cold air. I, Asher Greymond, looked to the gods on their solemn vigil. Our roots are deep, I thought then. Our roots are deep.